The look on my mother's face when the stranger opened my door is something I'll never forget. Her hand froze midair, holding a casserole dish she'd probably made to celebrate my sister's big move. My father stood behind her, shifting uncomfortably, pretending this wasn't awkward. And Amanda, my sister, looked at the man standing in my doorway as if he had stolen something. He hadn't. But I had taken something back. My peace, my independence, my life. That moment, the silence, the shock, the confusion, was exactly what I needed. Because for the first time in years, I wasn't the one being walked over. It's strange how one decision can flip your whole world. For years, I'd been the quiet one, the reasonable child, the one who never argued, never said no, never disappointed. That was my role in the family dynamic. The peacekeeper, the one who swallowed her pride and smiled through everything. Until that dinner. Until they told me my sister would be moving into my apartment without even asking me. As if my effort, my rent, my privacy didn't matter. It started like any other Sunday. Family dinner night, a ritual my parents clung to like it was sacred. Every month, same restaurant, same table, same routine. My dad would talk about the weather, my mom would critique the service, and Amanda would talk about her latest problem that somehow always became my responsibility to solve. I remember stirring my iced tea that night, zoning out as they talked. It was supposed to be peaceful, but there was a tension in the air. My parents were unusually cheerful, and Amanda, she was glowing. Something was coming. I could feel it. And then my mother said it, casually, like she was commenting on the soup. "Oh, by the way, Amanda will be moving in with you next month." Isn't that wonderful? Just like that. No warning, no discussion, no choice. I blinked, waiting for someone to laugh, for it to be a joke. But everyone else just kept eating. Even Amanda looked smug. She already knew. "Mom, what are you talking about?" I asked. "Amanda needs a place, dear," she said, waving her hand like it was obvious. "And you have that nice apartment. You're barely there anyway." Barely there? I worked 12-hour days to keep that apartment. It was the first place that was truly mine. No shared walls with family drama, no tension, no judgment, just space. And they wanted to take that too. It wasn't just about sharing a home. It was the principle, the entitlement, the assumption that my life was still theirs to organize. Amanda didn't even look guilty. She smirked, picking at her salad, and said, "It'll be fun." Like old times, old times. Old times meant me cleaning up her messes, me helping her with rent, me apologizing when she made mistakes. Old times meant losing myself. It's incredible how years of being treated as second priority can condition you to accept it, to nod and smile, to stay silent because it's easier than fighting. But something in me snapped that night. Maybe it was the tone. Maybe it was the assumption that I didn't deserve a say in my own life. Or maybe I was just tired. I remember taking a deep breath and saying quietly, "I don't think that's a good idea." It was like I'd cursed in church. The whole table went silent. "What do you mean?" my dad asked, brows furrowing. "She needs help," my mom added sharply. "You can't just abandon your sister." "I'm not abandoning her," I said. "But it's my apartment, my lease, my rules." I tried to stay calm, but my voice trembled. They exchanged glances, the kind parents give each other when they think their child is being unreasonable. Then my mother sighed dramatically. "You've always been so difficult when it comes to family, you know that?" Difficult. That word hit hard, because I wasn't difficult. I was done. In that moment, I realized something. They weren't asking for my help. They were demanding it, like they always had. All those years of family duty and doing what's right. It wasn't about love or support. It was about control. And for the first time, I saw it clearly. I forced a smile, nodded politely, and said, "If that's what you've decided, then okay." But inside, my mind was racing. Because if they thought they could assign my life like a piece of property, they were about to learn just how wrong they were. That night, as I drove home, I replayed every word in my head. The smirk on Amanda's face, the disappointment in my parents' tone, the years of quiet obedience that had brought me to this point. Something had to change. And when I met my new neighbor, Marcus, the next morning, I realized the universe had just sent me exactly the kind of help I needed. Growing up, Amanda was always the golden child, the one who got away with everything. If she broke something, I was the one who got scolded. If I achieved something, it was brushed off as expected. That pattern followed us into adulthood like a curse no one wanted to admit existed. And for years, I let it happen. Because that's what good daughters do. They keep the peace. But peace built on silence isn't peace. It's surrender. I still remember my 16th birthday. I'd spent weeks saving up for a small party. Just a few friends, nothing fancy. The night before, Amanda borrowed my dress, spilled red wine on it, and never apologized. My mom laughed it off. You know your sister, always clumsy. I went to my own party wearing jeans and a borrowed smile. That's what it was always like. Me sacrificing quietly so no one else had to feel uncomfortable. And the worst part? They all assumed I enjoyed being the responsible one. When I finally moved out, it felt like escaping gravity. I worked insane hours to afford that apartment, the one they now wanted to hand to Amanda like a gift. Every paycheck, every overtime shift, every night I came home exhausted. It was all worth it because it was mine. So when my parents announced their decision at dinner, it wasn't just unfair. It was a betrayal, a reminder that, in their eyes, I'd never really left home. I was still the reliable backup plan. Amanda wasn't cruel, not exactly. She just lived in a world where everything revolved around her. If she was struggling, everyone had to stop and help. If someone else needed something, she vanished. She'd quit 3 jobs in 1 year because they were too stressful. She'd maxed out credit cards, borrowed money, promised to pay it back, and never did. And somehow, I was always the one cleaning up after her. You're good with numbers, Mom would say. Just help her this once. Once became always. That pattern eats at you. It drains you until even small acts of kindness feel like chains. I started avoiding calls, skipping family dinners, pretending to be busy. Anything to protect my sanity. But parents like mine always find a way to pull you back. And this time, they weren't asking for money. They wanted space. My space. On my drive home that night, I couldn't stop thinking, why did they think they could do this? Why was Amanda's comfort always more important than my boundaries? Maybe because I'd taught them it was okay. Every sure. Every it's fine. Every quiet nod. It had built this version of me they could control. But not anymore. When I got back to my apartment, I noticed someone new moving in next door. A tall guy with messy brown hair and boxes labeled kitchen and plants. He smiled as I passed by. Hey, I'm Marcus. New neighbor. Normally, I would have smiled politely and kept walking. But something about that day, the anger, the exhaustion, made me stay. We talked for 10 minutes, maybe 15. He mentioned he was a freelance contractor and good with home projects. I mentioned my family drama, just the surface of it. He laughed softly and said, "Sounds like you need better locks." That line stuck with me. Better locks. Maybe I didn't just need new locks on my door. Maybe I needed them around my life. That night, I sat in my living room, staring at the apartment walls I'd fought for. I thought about Amanda's laughter, my parents' assumptions, and all the times I'd swallowed my pride. And then I realized I didn't have to fight them directly. I just had to let them see what happens when I stop playing the role they wrote for me. The plan started forming in my mind. Small, simple, harmless at first. But by the time they arrived with that trailer full of Amanda's things, it had evolved into something much more satisfying. I smiled as I locked my door that night. Because for the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of confrontation. I was planning it. And I had no idea that Marcus, my quiet new neighbor, would become the perfect partner in pulling it off. The next morning, I woke up with a sense of clarity I hadn't felt in years. It was like something had shifted overnight. A quiet, calm kind of anger that doesn't make you scream. It makes you plan. For once, I wasn't replaying their words in my head. I was replaying mine. Sure, Mom. She can move in next week. I'll make space. I'd said it with such ease that even I almost believed it. But what they didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I had no intention of letting Amanda live here. Planning begins. Conversation with Marcus. That afternoon, I knocked on Marcus's door. He opened it, holding a coffee mug and wearing that same easy grin. Morning, neighbor. You look like you've been doing some plotting. He wasn't wrong. I told him everything. The dinner, the assignment, the years of being the family doormat. Marcus listened without interrupting, nodding slowly. Then he said something that made me laugh for the first time in days. So, basically, they're about to get evicted from your life. I liked the sound of that. He leaned against the doorframe and asked, "What if, when they come to move her in, someone else answers the door?" I frowned. Someone else? Yeah, not you. Someone they don't know. Someone who makes it very clear this isn't Amanda's place anymore. At first, I thought he was joking. Then I realized he wasn't. The simplicity of it was perfect. No confrontation, no yelling match. Just silence and a locked door. A door that no longer belonged to the girl they could walk over. For the next few days, I played my role like an actor in a play. I called my mom, sounding cheerful. Yes, I cleared the guest room for Amanda. I even texted my sister, "Make sure to bring your plants. The window light is great." Meanwhile, Marcus helped me with the logistics. We moved some boxes out, staged the living room differently, even switched the name on the doorbell temporarily. He had a friend, a quiet guy named Alex, who agreed to be the stranger. Alex looked harmless but confident, the kind of person who could say, "I live here," and make anyone second-guess themselves. It was strange how empowering it felt to prepare like this. For years, my life had revolved around keeping everyone else comfortable. Now, I was deliberately creating discomfort, and I didn't feel guilty. Each box I moved, each key I handed Marcus, felt like reclaiming a piece of myself that I'd given away too easily. By the third day, everything was ready. The furniture looked slightly different. My clothes were packed into a storage unit. To anyone walking in, it would look like someone new had moved in weeks ago. And that's exactly what I wanted my family to believe. That evening, as we sat on my balcony with takeout, Marcus said, "You sure you're ready for this?" I looked out at the city lights and said, "I've been ready for years." I just didn't know it until now. He nodded, then raised his cup of soda like a toast. To boundaries. I smiled. To revenge that doesn't need shouting. The night before the move-in, my parents texted, "We'll be there by noon." "Don't forget to unlock the gate for the truck," I typed back. Got it. But when I hit send, my hand didn't shake. Not this time. Instead, I walked to the door, took off the spare key that hung by the frame, the one Mom always used when she stopped by unannounced. I placed it in a drawer and locked it away. Marcus helped Alex rehearse his lines. They laughed, but I could tell they understood how serious this was for me. I wrote a short note, folded it, and slid it into my pocket. It wasn't for them. It was for me. A reminder. You are not the backup plan. That night, lying in bed, I couldn't help but remember all the small betrayals. The birthday I spent alone because Amanda had a crisis. The college graduation my parents skipped because she wasn't feeling well. The time I got promoted and my dad said, "Good. Maybe now you can help your sister get on her feet." Each memory was like a thread, weaving into a single realization. I had been trained to feel guilty for choosing myself. But tomorrow they'd learn. Guilt is not the same as love. The morning of the move-in arrived like any other. Sunlight through the curtains, coffee brewing. Except this time, I wasn't dreading the knock on the door. I was waiting for it. Alex was already inside, sitting casually on the couch. Marcus stayed in his apartment but kept his phone on speaker, just in case I needed backup. I checked my reflection one last time. Not because I cared how I looked, but because I wanted to remember this face, the one that finally stopped apologizing. At exactly 11:59, the moving truck pulled up. I heard my mother's voice outside, cheerful and commanding. Amanda's laugh followed, high-pitched, careless, familiar. Then came the sound I'd been waiting for. 3 confident knocks on my door. Alex stood, adjusted his shirt, and looked at me. "You ready?" I smiled. "Let's begin." The moment the first knock echoed through the hallway, it felt like time paused. All those years of quiet resentment, swallowed words, forced smiles, they were all standing outside my door now, packed neatly into cardboard boxes labeled Amanda's stuff. Alex gave me one last look. I nodded. He turned the handle and opened the door. Parents enter scene. Confusion begins. My mom's voice came first, bright and expectant. "Sweetheart, we're here. Amanda's things are—" Then she froze. Standing in front of her wasn't me. It was a man she'd never seen before. Calm, composed, wearing a plain gray t-shirt. Behind him, my living room looked foreign, rearranged, unfamiliar. Can I help you?" Alex asked politely. Mom blinked, clearly thrown off. Where's my daughter?" "I live here," Alex said, his voice steady. "You must have the wrong apartment." Emotional confusion builds. For a few seconds, no one spoke. Even Amanda looked uncertain, glancing from the number on the door to the hallway around them. "Wait," she stammered. "This is her place." 3B. I've been here before." Alex tilted his head as if genuinely puzzled. "Sorry, miss. I moved in 2 weeks ago. Maybe you're thinking of 3A?" The silence that followed was delicious. I watched from Marcus's apartment next door through the peephole, every muscle in my body tight with anticipation. Dad stepped forward, his voice firm but not yet angry. "There must be a mistake. My daughter owned this apartment." Alex shook his head. "I'm renting it directly through the management office. Paperwork and everything." Parents begin to panic. Mom's voice cracked. No, that's impossible." "We just spoke to her. She said we could move my other daughter in today." Alex frowned, pretending to think. "That's strange. The previous tenant mentioned something about family issues, but she didn't leave a forwarding number." "Sorry." The look on Amanda's face was something I'll never forget. Confusion giving way to embarrassment, then anger. "What is going on?" she snapped. "Mom, did she actually say she wanted me to move in? Or did you just decide that?" Shift. Family tension resurfaces. Dad turned toward her, his tone sharp. "Watch your attitude." Your sister agreed, Amanda scoffed. "Yeah? Then where is she? Because it looks like she's moved on." That line hit harder than any confrontation I could have staged myself. Hearing my own sister say it, that I'd moved on, felt like a strange kind of validation. Mom began dialing her phone, her voice trembling. "She's not answering," she muttered. "Why isn't she answering?" Inside Marcus's apartment, I could hear every word through the thin wall. Each one was like a note in a song I'd written for myself. A quiet symphony of closure. Marcus whispered, "You okay?" I smiled faintly. Better than okay. They're finally seeing me the way I see them, from the other side of a locked door. Mom tried again, knocking softly this time. "Please, if you're in there, we just want to talk." Alex looked through the peephole and said calmly, "Ma'am, I think you've had a misunderstanding. I really need to get back to unpacking." Then he gently closed the door. The sound of the latch clicking shut was pure poetry. Outside, chaos unfolded. Amanda was furious. "This is ridiculous. You told me I could stay here." Mom turned on Dad. You were the one who said she wouldn't mind. Well, she shouldn't mind. We've helped her enough, Dad barked. Their voices grew louder, echoing down the hallway. The neighbors peeked out of their doors, whispering. Marcus leaned over and murmured, "They're giving you free theater." I waited until their voices began to fade, then picked up my phone and typed a message to my mother. I didn't sell the apartment. I just changed the locks. You made a decision without asking me, so I made one without telling you. Please stop showing up uninvited. I didn't hit send immediately. I stared at it for a full minute, my thumb hovering over the button. Because once I sent it, things would never go back to the way they were. Then I thought about every version of me they'd ignored. The one who stayed quiet to keep them calm. The one who apologized for existing too loudly. The one who kept giving until there was nothing left. And I pressed send. Through the peephole, I saw my mom read the message. Her shoulders slumped. For the first time, she looked small. Not angry, just defeated. Dad tried to grab the phone from her hand, but she pulled it away, shaking her head. Then, without another word, they turned and left. Amanda lingered a moment longer, staring at the closed door. Then she muttered under her breath, "Guess she finally grew a spine." It should have hurt, but it didn't. It felt right. When the hallway finally emptied, I stepped out of Marcus's apartment. He looked at me with that same calm smile. That went better than expected. I laughed softly, almost in disbelief. Yeah, for once I didn't have to explain myself. He handed me back my keys. So what now? I looked down the hall where my family had just left and said, now? I live my life like it's actually mine. That night, I sat on my couch, and exhaled. No guilt, no fear, just peace. For the first time, silence didn't feel like loneliness. It felt like freedom. I texted Marcus later. Thank you. For everything he replied, you did the hard part. Maybe he was right. Maybe walking away isn't the hard part. Maybe it's realizing you deserve to. If you've ever been made to feel small in your own family, if you've ever had to fight for the space that's already yours, you'll understand this story. There's always a way to stand your ground without screaming. Sometimes silence is the loudest form of power. If you believe that too, subscribe to the channel, because every story here reminds you that you're not alone in finding your voice. The days leading up to the family dinner felt heavier than usual. My mom kept texting reminders. Don't be late. And wear something nice, your sister's bringing dessert. As if it were some grand celebration instead of another night of subtle humiliation. I'd been through this song and dance countless times. Every family dinner followed the same pattern. Amanda showing off some new accomplishment, my parents nodding proudly, and me sitting quietly in the corner, trying not to choke on my resentment. But this time felt different. Because this time, I wasn't the same person anymore. Ever since Marcus moved into the apartment across from mine, something inside me had shifted. He was calm, confident, the kind of person who spoke his truth without raising his voice. And every time I saw him, I thought, why can't I do that? Why can't I stop letting them walk all over me? So that week, I made a decision. If they were planning another surprise for me, I'd be ready. When Saturday night came, I stood in front of my closet, staring at my reflection. My hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from adrenaline. I wasn't going to let them see me as the passive one anymore. Not tonight. I arrived right on time. The table was set perfectly, the air filled with the smell of roasted chicken and garlic bread. My mom's way of saying, see how much I care? Amanda was already there, of course. She looked up and flashed that polished smile she always wore. The kind that could charm anyone who didn't know her. Hey, you made it, she said brightly, as if we hadn't barely spoken in weeks. Wouldn't miss it, I replied, keeping my tone even. My dad clapped me on the shoulder as I sat down. Good to see you, son. How's the apartment? Still keeping it tidy? I forced a small smile. Yeah, it's good. He nodded approvingly, then turned to Amanda. You'll love living there. It's in a great area. The words hit me like a hammer. For a second, I thought I'd misheard him. My fork froze halfway to my mouth. Wait, I said carefully. What do you mean she'll love living there? My mom exchanged a quick look with my dad, one of those silent marital communications that usually preceded bad news. Oh, honey, we were going to tell you tonight, she began softly. Amanda's apartment lease is up next week, and since you've got that extra room, it just makes sense for her to move in with you for a while. I blinked. It just makes sense? Without even asking me? Amanda tried to cut in. Come on, it's not a big deal. We're siblings. I'll just stay for a few months. I couldn't help but laugh. A short, bitter sound. You're unbelievable. The room fell silent. The kind of silence where everyone's waiting for you to apologize, to back down. But I didn't. I set my fork down and looked directly at my parents. Let me get this straight. You decided that my apartment, which I pay for, which I maintain, is now open for occupation? And I don't even get a vote? My dad sighed, already annoyed. Son, don't be dramatic. Family helps family. It's only temporary I felt my pulse pounding in my temples. You've said that my whole life. Family helps family. But what you really mean is I help you. Every single time my mom frowned. That's not fair. No, I interrupted, my voice shaking now. What's not fair is that you expect me to always give in. You never once ask how I feel. You just decide, and I'm supposed to smile and go along with it. Amanda rolled her eyes. You're seriously making a scene about this? You're alone all the time anyway. What's the problem? And that's when something inside me snapped. I stood up slowly. The problem, I said, is that you think my space, my peace, my life, are all negotiable. My dad's tone hardened. Sit down. You're overreacting. I met his stare evenly. No, not this time. Without another word, I pushed my chair back, grabbed my jacket, and walked out the front door. The sound of my mother calling my name followed me down the driveway. But I didn't turn back. For the first time in years, I felt something powerful. Something I hadn't felt in a long, long time. Control. That night, I called Marcus. He picked up after 2 rings. Rough dinner? He asked. You could say that. I told him everything. About the dinner, the decision, the way they'd tried to turn my home into a shared space without even asking. When I finished, there was a pause. Then Marcus said something simple, but it hit me deep. So what are you going to do about it? I smiled to myself, already forming the plan in my head. Oh, I'll let them have their way, I said quietly. They'll come with Amanda and her boxes, expecting to find me waiting at the door. But when they knock, I paused, letting the suspense build even in my own mind. Someone else will answer. By the way, if you've ever had a moment when your family crossed a line and you wanted to take a stand, you're going to love where this story goes next. Hit subscribe so you don't miss how this plan unfolds. Trust me, it gets intense. When I hung up the phone that night, I just sat there in the dark, the city humming softly outside my window, thinking about every single time my parents had made decisions for me. Every time I'd swallowed my frustration, smiled through the sting, and convinced myself that keeping the peace was worth it. But not anymore. For once, I was going to let them feel what it's like to be on the receiving end of someone else's decision. The next morning, I met Marcus in the hallway. He was holding a mug of coffee, his dog at his feet, and that same calm grin that made you feel like the world wasn't so bad after all. So, he said, leaning on his doorframe, you're serious about this plan? I nodded. Completely. He chuckled. All right. Walk me through it. I took a deep breath. They think Amanda's moving in next week. They'll probably show up with a trailer full of her stuff, expecting me to welcome her in. Instead, I smiled. You'll be the one opening the door. Marcus raised an eyebrow. You want me to pretend to be you? Not exactly. I said. Just a friendly stranger who happens to live there now. He grinned. You're evil. I love it. The next few days were all about preparation. I started by moving a few of my things into storage, just enough to make the apartment look unfamiliar. Marcus helped me set up a few of his decorations, his guitar in the corner, some art pieces on the wall. Then we rehearsed. Yes, rehearsed. I knew my parents. I knew how they'd react. Shock, confusion, maybe even anger. But I also knew that nothing I could say would teach them the lesson they needed to learn. They had to feel it. Marcus was the perfect actor for the role. Calm, polite, and impossible to intimidate. You sure you're ready for this? He asked me one evening as we wrapped up. Oh, I've been ready for years, I said quietly. The night before move-in day, my phone buzzed with a message from my mom. Mom, see you tomorrow, sweetie. We'll be there around noon. Don't forget to clear the guest room for Amanda. I stared at the screen for a while, then typed back a single word. Me. Sure. Then I turned off my phone. The next morning, I was at Marcus's apartment early. We made coffee, double-checked the apartment setup, and went over the plan one last time. Marcus would answer the door when they arrived. He'd act completely natural, like he'd been living there for weeks. He'd even offer them water because politeness adds the perfect sting to confusion. Meanwhile, I'd be nearby, watching from my car. It wasn't about cruelty. It wasn't revenge for revenge's sake. It was about showing them that my boundaries were real. At 11:47 a.m., I saw their car pull up, a silver SUV packed to the brim. Amanda in the passenger seat, my parents in the front, the back seat full of boxes labeled Amanda's stuff. The sight alone almost made me laugh. They got out, cheerful and oblivious. My dad whistled as he walked toward the door carrying a box. My mom trailed behind, talking about curtains. Amanda had her phone out, probably texting her friends about her new place. I leaned back in my seat, heart pounding. Showtime. Marcus opened the door just as they reached it. Hey there, he said warmly. Can I help you? My dad blinked. Sorry. We must have the wrong door. We're looking for apartment 3B. Marcus smiled. This is 3B? There was a long pause. My mom frowned. Wait, what? That's not possible. Our son lives here. Oh, Marcus said casually. The guy who used to live here? He moved out a few days ago. You could practically see the confusion spreading across their faces. Amanda spoke up next, her tone sharp. What do you mean he moved out? He's my brother. He didn't say anything about that. Marcus shrugged. Sorry, ma'am. I just signed the lease last week. The landlord handed me the keys. My dad's voice grew louder. No, this is a mistake. We helped our son move in here ourselves. Marcus kept his composure perfectly. Yeah, the place was great. I guess he decided to relocate. Left in kind of a hurry, though. From my car, I watched as their faces morphed from confusion to disbelief. My mom clutched Amanda's arm. Did something happen? Why wouldn't he tell us? Amanda pulled out her phone, frantically trying to call me. I let it ring. Once. Twice. Then I declined the call. Marcus, still perfectly polite, said, Hey, I'm really sorry for the mix-up. You could check with the building manager. They'll confirm the transfer. Transfer? My dad barked. Yeah, Marcus said with a friendly shrug. He must have asked them to reassign the unit. Guess he was ready for a change. Amanda's jaw dropped. He gave my apartment to a stranger? And that was the moment I smiled. They stood there for a few more seconds, stunned, silent, and unsure of what to do, before my dad finally muttered, Unbelievable, and started walking back toward the car. My mom turned to Marcus. If you hear from him, please tell him to call us. I'll do that, Marcus said kindly, closing the door. A few minutes later, I drove past them slowly, windows rolled up. They didn't notice me. For once, I wasn't angry. I wasn't bitter. I was free. Because the message had been delivered, not through shouting or arguing, but through silence and surprise. They wanted control. Instead, they got confusion. They wanted obedience. Instead, they got a stranger at the door. And for the first time in my life, I realized something simple but powerful. Sometimes the best way to be heard is not to explain yourself at all. Have you ever imagined doing something like this? Not to hurt someone, but just to make them finally understand your worth? Let me know in the comments. I read every single one. The next day, I woke up to 27 missed calls, 14 from Mom, 8 from Amanda, 5 from Dad, and one text message that simply read, "What on earth did you do?" I stared at the screen, sipping my coffee. For the first time in years, the anxiety wasn't there. I didn't feel guilt twisting in my stomach. Just calm. Because deep down, I knew this was the only way they'd ever stop treating me like an extra in my own life. Around noon, there was a loud knock on Marcus's door. 3 sharp hits. Then silence. He looked at me. "I'm guessing that's your fan club?" I smirked. "The one and only." He grinned. "You ready for this?" "I was born ready," I said, though my heartbeat was racing. Marcus opened the door just enough for my mom's shocked face to appear. "There you are," she exclaimed, spotting me behind him. "What is going on? Why didn't you tell us you moved out?" I stepped forward, calm and collected. "Because I didn't move out." Her brow furrowed. "What do you mean you didn't move out?" He said. Marcus raised his hand slightly. "I told them the truth," he said smoothly. "The lease was transferred." Mom's eyes went wide. "You did what?" Dad stepped closer, his tone firm. "This isn't funny. You can't just give your apartment away. Your sister has nowhere else to go." I met his stare evenly. "She has your house, doesn't she? Or maybe one of the 3 guest rooms you never let me use when I needed space." He blinked, thrown off by the sharpness in my voice. Amanda crossed her arms. "You're being dramatic." That word, dramatic, hit me like a slap. It was the same word they'd used my whole life whenever I tried to express hurt. I took a slow breath. "Do you know what's dramatic, Amanda? Showing up at my place with a trailer full of your stuff like you own it? That's dramatic." She rolled her eyes. "Mom and Dad said it made sense. You have extra room." "That room," I said quietly, "was the first space I ever had that didn't belong to you. Or them. The first place I could breathe without asking permission. You don't just walk in and claim that Mom's tone softened. Honey, we just thought—" "That's the problem," I interrupted. "You thought for me. You've always thought for me." Silence. Heavy, uncomfortable, unfamiliar. Even Marcus stepped back, letting the weight of the moment settle. I continued, my voice steady. "I've spent my whole life being the easy one. The one who fixes things, who forgives, who stays quiet. But silence isn't peace. It's pain wearing a polite face." Dad frowned, still defensive. "We didn't mean to hurt you." "I know," I said. "But you did." Amanda scoffed. "So this prank was supposed to make you feel better?" "No," I said. "It was supposed to make you understand." She looked at me blankly. "Understand what?" "That actions have consequences, that you can't take from people forever and expect them to keep smiling." Amanda's lips pressed into a thin line. For once, she didn't have a comeback. Mom's voice cracked slightly. "You could have just told us." I shook my head. I did. 1,000 times, in 1,000 small ways, but you never listened. So I had to show you. Dad sighed, rubbing his forehead. "You've made your point." "Good," I said. "Then maybe this time it'll stick." For a long moment, no one spoke. The air was thick with something raw. Not anger, not even guilt, just realization. Mom's eyes softened. "You really aren't that little girl anymore, are you?" I smiled faintly. No, Mom. I grew up. You just never noticed. She nodded slowly, the tension in her shoulders easing. I suppose we deserved this lesson. Amanda looked away, arms still crossed, but I could tell something in her had shifted too. Maybe confusion, maybe shame. It didn't matter. The silence between us wasn't hostile anymore. It was honest. After they left, Marcus leaned against the wall, exhaling. That, he said, was the most satisfying drama I've ever witnessed. I laughed, the sound almost foreign after weeks of tension. You think I overdid it? He shook his head. Not even a little. Sometimes you have to shake the world a bit before it finally notices you exist. Yeah, I said softly. And sometimes it's not the world you're shaking. It's yourself. Later that evening, my phone buzzed again. A new message from Mom. We love you. We'll try to do better. Just 6 words, but they hit me harder than anything else that day. I looked around my apartment, my space, and realized how peaceful it felt. No resentment, no guilt, just quiet. Marcus knocked on the wall between our units jokingly. You okay in there? I smiled. Yeah, for the first time in a long time, I really am. Have you ever stood up to someone who kept crossing your boundaries, even if it meant losing their approval? Tell me your story down below. Maybe someone else needs to hear it today. As the night deepened, I poured myself a glass of wine, turned on some music, and sat by the window watching the city lights shimmer. It wasn't revenge I'd accomplished. It was release. Because sometimes standing up for yourself doesn't have to be loud. It just has to be final. The morning after the confrontation, my apartment felt different. It wasn't just a place anymore. It felt alive again, like it had finally become mine in every sense of the word. The light streaming through the curtains seemed softer. The air felt cleaner. Even the sound of the city outside didn't bother me the way it used to. I'd expected to wake up with guilt, maybe even regret. But instead, I woke up with peace. A kind of quiet that you don't realize you've been missing until you finally have it. I made breakfast slowly without checking my phone. Every slice of toast, every sip of coffee. It all felt symbolic, like I was feeding a version of myself I'd neglected for years. Halfway through my meal, my phone buzzed. A message from Amanda. I don't get what you were trying to prove. But I guess you did. I'll figure things out. I stared at it for a long time, unsure what to feel. Relief? Sadness? Vindication? Maybe all of them. Because for once, she wasn't expecting me to fix her mess. She was facing life. On her own terms. Later that day, I went for a walk around the block. The air was crisp, the sun warm against my skin. I passed families, couples, people laughing at outdoor cafes, all living their lives, free of the expectations I'd carried for years. And that's when it hit me. My story wasn't really about revenge. It was about freedom. Revenge gives you satisfaction, but freedom gives you peace. When I got back, Marcus was on the balcony watering his plants. He looked up and smiled. You survived, he said teasingly. I laughed. Barely. He gestured toward the chair beside him. Come on, tell me what it feels like to win, I sat down. It doesn't feel like winning, I admitted. It feels like breathing again. Marcus nodded. You know, most people don't realize that boundaries aren't about keeping people out. They're about keeping yourself safe inside that line stuck with me. He was right. For years, I'd been so focused on being the good daughter that I forgot I was allowed to protect my own peace. That night, I called my mom, not to reopen wounds, but to start healing. She answered on the second ring. Her voice was soft, tired. Hi, sweetheart. Hi, Mom. A long pause hung between us, full of words neither of us had the courage to say. Finally, she spoke. I've been thinking about what you said, about boundaries. I guess I didn't realize how much we expected from you. It's okay, I said. I let it happen. She sighed. We'll do better. I promise I know you will. And for the first time in years, I believed her. After that call, I stood by the window again, the city lights flickering like quiet stars below. So much had changed in just a few days. Not the world around me, but the world inside me. Because once you set a boundary, the people who truly love you learn to respect it. The ones who don't, drift away. And both outcomes are okay. Have you ever realized that peace doesn't come from people changing? It comes from you finally saying no? If this story hit close to home, let me know in the comments below. You're not alone. Weeks passed, and the drama faded like an old bruise. Amanda found a new place. Smaller, humbler, but hers. Mom and Dad started calling before making decisions that involved me. And Marcus? He became more than just a neighbor. Sometimes we'd joke that he was my partner in crime, but really he'd been something much more important. The reminder that allies appear when you finally choose yourself. One evening, we sat on the balcony again, watching the sunset stain the sky gold and crimson. Marcus turned to me and said, "So, what's next for you?" I smiled. "I think I'm going to start writing again." Writing? Yeah, about people who find their voice, about standing up after years of silence. He grinned. "Sounds like a bestseller already." I laughed softly. "Maybe it'll just be for me." Not every story needs an audience. He raised his mug in a mock toast. To new beginnings, then. I clinked mine against his. To peace. As the sky darkened, I thought about everything that had happened. The years of quiet resentment, the confrontation, the lesson that followed. And I realized something simple yet profound. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stop explaining yourself to people who never really listened. Because peace isn't something they give you. It's something you claim. Quietly, firmly, and completely. If this story reminded you of your own journey, of finding strength, of letting go, of finally standing up for yourself, make sure to subscribe for more stories like this. Every story here has one purpose: to remind you that your voice matters, even when the world tries to silence it. That night, as I sat by my window watching the city lights shimmer against the darkness, I thought about how strange it is. The way life shifts when you finally choose yourself. It's not loud. It doesn't happen in explosions or dramatic goodbyes. It's quiet, subtle. Like the way dawn creeps in after the longest night. Soft, but unstoppable. For years, I believed that peace came from keeping everyone happy. That if I just tried a little harder, gave a little more, stayed a little quieter, people would finally see me. But they didn't. Because I was too busy disappearing for their comfort. You can't build love out of silence. And you can't build respect out of obedience. It took losing my patience, my guilt, and nearly my own sense of worth to finally understand that. When I said no, truly said no, for the first time, it felt like I was breathing air that had been waiting for me my whole life. I think everyone reaches that point eventually. That invisible line between what you tolerate and what you deserve. And when you finally cross it, it doesn't make you selfish. It makes you free. Days turned into weeks, and everything slowly settled. The calls from my family became less tense, more genuine. Amanda even texted me again one night. This time, not to complain, but to ask how I was doing. It wasn't perfect. It never is. But it was real, and that was enough. I started noticing things I hadn't before. How the morning sunlight hit my kitchen counter just right. How quiet the apartment felt without unspoken tension hanging in the air. How laughter sounded different when it came from a place of peace instead of exhaustion. Those little things. They were the signs that life was healing itself, one quiet breath at a time. If you've ever had to walk away from something that drained you, even when it hurt, I want you to know that's not weakness. That's courage. Comment "I choose peace" if this story spoke to you. One evening, I visited my parents for dinner again. Same table, same chairs. But this time, something had changed. When Amanda spoke, I listened. And when I spoke, they listened too. No interruptions, no assumptions. Just a family learning to exist in balance. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It never really was. It was about respect. The kind that isn't given because of blood, but because of boundaries. As we finished dinner, Dad raised his glass. To new beginnings. He said awkwardly but sincerely. Mom smiled. To family, the kind that learns. And Amanda, in her usual style, smirked. And to my amazing sister, who apparently knows how to teach lessons better than any therapist. We all laughed, and for the first time, the laughter didn't feel forced. Later that night, as I walked back home, the air was cold but comforting. I looked up at the stars, faint but stubborn, and thought about how peace doesn't mean having a perfect family or fixing every broken thing. Sometimes, peace is just the absence of pretending. It's the space you create when you stop performing for love and start existing for yourself. When I reached my door, Marcus was sitting outside, tuning his guitar. He looked up. "Hey, teacher of life lessons." I laughed. "Hey, co-conspirator." He nodded toward my apartment. "Still happy with how it turned out?" I smiled softly. "Happier than I've ever been." He strummed a quiet chord, the sound echoing gently down the hall. Then he said something I'll never forget. "Sometimes you don't have to burn bridges. Just stop lighting them for people who never crossed to meet you." I stood there, letting those words sink in. Because that was it. That was the truth I'd been chasing all along. If you've made it this far, thank you for being part of this journey. Every story here is more than just words. It's a reminder that you have a voice and you deserve to use it. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this. Stories that heal, stories that challenge, and stories that remind you. Peace isn't found. It's chosen.